Hi, everybody. This is Helen Sedwick, and I'm here today with Orna Ross. And we're going to talk to writers who are starting to see some success in their writing or are certainly planning on that. And they're starting to wonder, what's next? What else can I do? Who else can I reach with my writing? Maybe you have a sense that there's a whole world of opportunity out there, and from film to translations, but you don't know where to start to even approach that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about that business mindset, to go out there and investigate what rights you can sell and selling them, and expand your reach that way. Give me a pause here. I have kind of a uneasy relationship with technology. Here we go. So the opportunities for writers are really exploding. Writers are familiar with some of the more traditional opportunities for their work, but those opportunities may be broader than writers think. They're even theme parks based upon books. And writing can also be the platform for really launching a speaking or consulting or other professional business. And at the same time, most of us can no longer hope to have an agent who's really going to stay on top of all the opportunities on the market and be able to negotiate the right deal for us in all market segments. It would be great to have somebody who could do that for you while you could focus on the writing. Because most writers would rather not deal with the marketing aspect. The learning curve seems daunting and intimidating. But if you ignore these realities, you won't reach the readers and you won't generate the income that could really make writing more than a hobby and really make it a business and something that you can do for the rest of your life and make a good life for yourself. Because your brain is full of a lot of creative, analytical, insightful material that can be converted into a business. So we're going to give you some tools today to help you navigate this new world of opportunity for writers. First, a little bit about me. I've been practicing law for the last 30-some years and been a closet writer on the side. In fact, I'm sure that law school is full of writers who lost their nerve. A few years ago, I self-published an historical novel, Coyote Wins. And after self-publishing that, I realized there was a real gap in the market, that no one had written a book to help self-publishing writers deal with everything from business setup and taxes to defamation and copyright infringement. So I wrote the Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook. And then a year ago, Orna and I got together and we worked on a more sophisticated book, How Authors Sell Publishing Rights, that looks in more depth than we can do today on the various opportunities in the market. So before we get started, let's talk about what you own and what you're out there going to be marketing. You own a copyright in your work. Copyright attaches as soon as you put the work in tangible form, whether it's a piece of paper or on a computer. It used to be that you had to put a copyright notice on it or register the copyright or publish the work in order for the copyright to be valid and to last. That is no longer the case. Copyright attaches automatically in most of the world. And it lasts for a very long time. It will last for your life plus 70 years in most of the world today. So if you do the math, your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren could be earning royalties on a book you publish today. Now, what does it mean to own a copyright? A copyright owner has the exclusive right to print, reproduce, sell, perform, create derivative works such as films, plays, translations, sequels, prequels, merchandise, and more. And the way you earn income from this, since you're not in the business of making films or making teddy bears, is that you work with others to get your work out there and convert it into income. So we're going to talk about these arrangements or these contracts that you have with others. And we're going to start by having a little vocabulary lesson. First, although writers talk about selling their work, they're really not selling ownership. What they are selling is a license. A license is merely permission to use your work in a particular way. It could be limited by language, region, format. It could be limited in time. It could be exclusive, meaning that the person you grant these rights to is the only person who can take advantage of these film rights or translation rights in a particular language. Or you could be granting a non-exclusive non-exclusive license. That's common in self-publishing. For instance, you might be printing and selling your book through Amazon and Ingram, and ebooks through Smashwords and also Amazon and various other retailers. Occasionally, you'll see a contract in which the other side is asking you to assign all your rights over. That means a transfer of ownership. It's very rare, and you should be very cautious about ever signing anything that looks like an assignment of all ownership. It's extremely rare, except in ghostwriting projects, in which case your client may want total ownership. Another concept in these contracts is reversion. Under what circumstances and at what time do you get your rights back? It used to be that a lot of contracts simply expired after a certain amount of time, or they expired or terminated when the book went out of print. Nowadays, books simply don't go out of print. They could remain as ebooks forever. So those reversion clauses have now morphed into clauses that say, if sales fall below a certain threshold, then the writer has rights to terminate the contract. Then there's this whole bucket of rights called subsidiary rights, which is where movies, plays, foreign rights, merchandise fall. So the way to think about what you own when you own a manuscript is that you own an apartment building, and you're going to rent out rooms in this apartment building to various renters, or we'll call them licensees here, your licensees. And you want to get as many renters as you can paying you income. So one of those might be ebooks in Spanish. Another might be print books in Chinese. So you want to kind of think of all of these various rights and how you can slice and dice them and get people to help you reach these markets in a synergistic way. And to do that, you have to be very careful that you don't sign a contract that gives somebody all the rights to your work in all formats, all languages, all countries for the life of the contract or life of the copyright, because those are out there and you will see them. So how are you going to know what these contracts say? After all, a lot of these contracts look like 5,000 words run through a blender. You're going to have to read them. Now, the trick on reading these contracts is you don't start at the beginning. If you start at the beginning of these contracts, you're going to be worn out and confused by the time you get to the important part. You're going to go straight for the section that talks about what rights are being granted. Because if that section is too broad and unfair, you probably don't have to read anything else. And that's going to be the first one that you're going to negotiate. So you're going to look for the grant of rights. You're going to try to keep them as narrow as possible, and I'll show you some examples. And you're going to approach each one of these relationships thinking, is there a synergistic relationship here? Can this publisher or producer or translator help you reach markets and make money for you that you wouldn't be able to do yourself. But they have to be able to make some money as well. If they can't reach a certain market, then there's no reason for you to give them a license to that market. Nobody benefits that way. It merely ties things up and complicates things to nobody's benefit. You also need to think about whether this company has the wherewithal to pay you. Unfortunately, in the publishing industry and in the film industry, there are many people with great intentions who simply can't pull it off. That's going to take a bit of research on your part. And then as you look at these agreements, you're going to be very cautious about signing anything that says you can't compete, because that's super vague. What does that mean? And you don't want to lock in your future books with this publisher or producer, because you may be able to demand a lot more in a few years, or you may not want to work with this company again. The next section you want to look at is, how do you get out of the contract? All contracts come to an end, hopefully in a happy way, but many come to an end in an unhappy way. So you want to look at how to terminate the contract. For instance, your book never gets launched, or the film never gets produced by a certain date, or, as I discussed before, sales fall below a threshold. And don't feel you have to go it alone. If you don't have an agent, you may be able to get an agent once you have people interested in your book. You could hire an attorney. There are a lot of organizations that will help writers. You need to do your homework, and I'll give you some resources at the end of my talk. And the next thing to do is prepare. The most important part of any negotiation is the preparation. You need to do your homework to figure out what's negotiable, what is it you want and why, and what is it the other side wants and why. Keeping in mind that the deal has to work on both sides, both financially and in many ways emotionally. This is a creative business. Even the other side wants to have some creative input. Listen and offer solutions. Don't go into a negotiation thinking that either you don't deserve to negotiate, you're shy about negotiation, you don't want to cause trouble. And don't go in assuming you have to win every point. You're much better in between, really listening and talking out something and creating a long-term relationship that's positive for both sides. So, as promised, here are some examples. This is a very broad grant of a license, and it's what you're typically going to see in the first draft that's handed to you. You look at some of the words here. It's exclusive. It's transferable, meaning that they could sell off these rights to somebody else. It's worldwide. And if you go on, they can sell your book via subscription in any language, in print and digital and audio, and in any other medium now known or hereafter devised. I wouldn't sign something like this broad, unless it was with a very large company with the wherewithal and the contacts to really get my work out there in all formats, in all languages. And I was getting a big advance in addition. And here's another one that's really broad. And this one I found in a contest for a children's book company, tiny little company that just does children's books, just ebooks, in fact. And their license was exclusive, worldwide, perpetual, again, for print, audio, sound, analog, digital, digitized, all languages, whether now existing or later developed. And then it goes on to say the publisher also has the right to create a series or derivative books based upon your storylines, characters, illustrations, and even to create merchandise. I mean, you would get a royalty, but I would never give a company this kind of grant without a substantial advance and a really good feel for the company that they could actually pull it off. So here's a narrow grant. You might not be able to get something this narrow, but you might as well try. Here's an example. This is author grants to publisher a sole and exclusive right, and it's for in print and digital in English in the United States and Canada. During the term of this agreement also had a reversion clause that if sales went below a certain threshold, the author could ask for the rights to be handed back. I think it was like a 6-month or a year notice. The most important thing is don't sign what you don't understand. There are a lot of resources out there. Authors Guild, if you can often qualify to join Authors Guild and other similar organizations, even if as a self-publisher, if your sales are over a certain amount, and it's not a very high amount. Once you join, these organizations have great resources, and some of them even provide legal review of contracts. Alliance of Independent Authors, their website is full of information, and more is added each day. And my blog, I cover a lot of issues, particularly for self-publishers, which is something I've been focusing on. And writers, we are a chatty group. We like to share what we know. So there are a lot of books out there that will help you with these contracts and understanding your rights. I've put some here that are quite good, and new ones are coming out all the time. And then there is the book that Orna and I wrote, which not only talks about legal issues, it also just talks about the market in general. And then the most important resource you have is each other. I've been in business for 30-some years, and I've never seen a community of people who should be competitors, but that act like colleagues. If you post a question on some writers' forums or on Google+, you're going to get dozens of people who are going to give you their experience, their insight, their advice. It's really quite extraordinary, and is one reason why the whole publishing world has changed and become so much more accessible to everybody who has something to say. So at this point, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm always available for questions. You can contact me through my website, which is www.helensedwick.com. So now I'm going to turn over to Orna.